get that experience throughout a game, so when it comes down the line, when it really matters, I can go revert back to, okay, how did I respond here, and let's move forward.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. I'm Dennis Fithian. That was Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, who met the media this week in front of Michigan's game with Nebraska as the Wolverines return home to take on the Cornhuskers this Saturday in a 3:30 kick. We're talking about Michigan football today. We're talking about Michigan football. I laugh because we talk about what's going on the latest in Michigan sports weekdays here at 1 o'clock. And, the Michigan, an undefeated team sitting at number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. So we're talking about Michigan today. Believe me, that's what's going on. And that is what's happening. If you don't believe me and you're watching this, I can just put it up on the screen for you in a second. First, I want to tell you that if you're a Uber Michigan fan and you got the holidays coming up, you can treat yourself or treat somebody you know to the gift of Michigan and knowing everything that's going on with the Wolverines. That's joining us at the Maize and Blue Review. Go to michigan.rivals.com. 50% off your first year. You get full access today. Use the promo code MBR1year. That's MBR1 year. We'll see you over there on the posting board. Now, what we are talking about today, I ask you the question. We've got the question of the day for you today, and I want to know, how much better do you feel about U of M beating Ohio State now, today, than you did before the season? How much better do you feel about U of M beating Ohio State than you did before the season? Go ahead and answer that one. We're an interactive show. What's that mean? Well, if you're watching this live right now, you go ahead, put your thoughts up on the screen, and we get to them. You want to answer the question? We read your answers. You have an opinion? You have a question? We get to them, as we are an interactive show. That's the way it's done here. We'll also look ahead to Saturday, the college football menu, but we'll start with the college football rankings that came out yesterday. And you got Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, and TCU 4. We don't have to go any further than that, do we? I mean, you can go down. It depends. Like if you're not an undefeated season or an undefeated team, you look at it and, you start, playing things like, well, you want chaos, and you want LSU. Chaos would be, LSU going all the way and winning the SEC championship game where maybe they could grab the 4th spot and be the first 2-loss team ever. I know Tide fans are still holding out hope that Alabama could do that. That's what you do when you have a loss. You start hoping for this and then that, and then you need some help, and then you're hoping the committee isn't, a bunch of clowns and they're not going to screw you. But right now, Michigan doesn't have to worry about any of that. They're right there in the thick of things. I know a lot of people, and I get that. Like, why are you talking about college football rankings? They don't matter. It's college football, and their rankings, and Michigan is right up at the top. Would I be sitting here, dicing up the college football rankings if Michigan was some 3-loss team or something? Like, no, I wouldn't be sitting around. If I was doing like a Michigan State podcast, would I be sitting around saying, let's really talk about the college football rankings and, what talk? No, I wouldn't be doing that. Because it doesn't matter. College football rankings don't matter to Michigan State. They matter to Michigan right now. And, for Michigan, Georgia definitely deserves to be number 1. I would have voted if I was putting my vote down, if I was on that selection committee. I'd have said, hey, bring me another roast beef sandwich. I'll take a couple more drinks. And then, I'm putting Michigan at number 2. That's how I'm voting them. I put Ohio State at number 2. They've got Michigan 3. And, they talked about Ohio State. They were asked specifically about the wind in Evanston, and it was windy, and Ohio State really sucked. Barely beat Northwestern, but the weather really impacted them, so that's why we put I guess they took the weather into account there, and Michigan is getting penalized for their strength of schedule. If you're watching on the screen, I have the top 10 teams in the college football rankings, and then next to the team to the right, I have what their strength of schedule is. And Georgia's number 1 with the strength of schedule at 47. Ohio State's number 2 with a strength of schedule of 53. Michigan's 3 with a strength of schedule of 73. Now, TCU, they don't have a very good strength of schedule. It's a little bit better than Michigan's at 68. Those 4 teams are undefeated. It shouldn't matter. If those 4 teams went undefeated, they should be in. But we know that that's not going to happen because Michigan and Ohio State play in 17 days. So there's going to be, at the most, 3 undefeated teams. So you are going to have a 1-loss or maybe a 2-loss team that's going to be politicking and hoping for bias, their way. There's one thing for sure, whoever you're talking with, they want to talk about the bias. ESPN's biased. This guy's biased. This show's Heather Dinich. Everybody's biased. You want the bias to lean your way. And, the thing about the bias, none of the bias or anything else matters for Michigan. We all know that's the long and short of it. And it is a great spot to be if you're a Michigan fan. It doesn't matter what Heather Dinich or Jerry Palm or any kind of computer nerd that has some kind of formula cooked up in this metric that has, Michigan like 4th. It doesn't matter. You already know that. When it matters, if things don't go well in that final game against Ohio State, then you're putting yourself at the mercy of the committee, and then anything can happen. So then that's when you start cranking up the bias machine and the Twitter and everything else. And for me, when that bridge presents itself, if it does, I'll cross it. But until that point, I don't need to cross any bridge about what if Michigan loses a game. And I don't right now, the idea, Michigan's close enough where in the offseason, I have to admit, people say it, and, I've said it in the past, and it sounds a little, certainly sounds ambitious. It sounds a little crazy when people are like, Michigan's going undefeated. I'm always like, it sounds great. Sounds great. I really don't believe that. It really doesn't happen very often, like once in my lifetime. So talking about going undefeated is, just a lot of talk, a lot of hot air in the offseason. But now, as we sit here, we're getting, close to the middle of November, and we can see the finish line. Talking about going undefeated is legitimate talk. And so it's not only is it fun, it's legit. Nobody can tell you, I don't know, you're crazy if you think you're going undefeated. Okay. Michigan fans are crazy. Now, I have to admit, just the same thing I do with the college football playoff, and everybody else does it. Like everybody assumes, like, well, they're going to win these 2 games and they're going to win the championship. I assume that Michigan is going to beat Nebraska this Saturday. I believe that. I'm assuming it. I'm expecting it. I'm also expecting Michigan to beat Illinois in their home finale coming up a week from Saturday. I expect to see that. I expect Michigan to be 11-0 going down to Columbus. I also expect Ohio State to be undefeated there. So you're going to have 2 11-0 teams clashing. That's what I'm not only I can hope for it. I don't hope that Ohio State stays undefeated. I expect them to be. But I do expect Michigan to be undefeated heading down to Columbus, where if they win that game, I would then expect them to win the Big Ten championship game and go to the college football playoff for a second time. Just sit back, And it's not all that crazy. The expectations, like and the hope and all that, it's not all that far-fetched. I'd ask you the question about Ohio State. I'm going to answer this one myself. How much better you feel about U of M beating OSU than you did before the season? I'm answering that coming up straight ahead. And we'll see what the people are saying about it. Richard says He's more impressed with Michigan's ability to impose their will even more than last year when we kicked their ass. That's a fair point, Richard. I am more impressed as well with Michigan's ability to impose their will, especially since they did it. Once you do it, like you can go down there and say, okay, Ohio State's always been a horse of a different color or whatever you want to say. But then they did it. And now they're doing it again. And now they look down there and thinking that they can go down there and run all over the scarlet and gray. That doesn't sound all that far-fetched. That's for sure. Account 22 says he feels much better this year about beating Ohio State. Much better, he says. Richard thinks Michigan should be number 2. I hear that. Malachi's ready to just go ahead and skip over the pink shirts and go to Illinois. Yeah, well, sure, let's bring on Ohio State right now. I just take it, let's skip ahead. We're not skipping ahead. We're going to play the games anyways. We're going to talk about them each and every day. It's just Wednesday, it's okay, just enjoy the games, enjoy it while it's happening. I do get that part. I always, in the summer, as soon as the Tigers are out of it, like, by tax day, like 12 days into the season, I'm like, all right, when's college football start? Let's just fast forward right to the summer and let's get to fall. But, I'm going to take up some other hobbies in the summer. I'm going to go hit some golf balls. I'm not just going to be waking up every day saying I'm ready for the fall when it's not even June yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and enjoy it all. And one thing about the weekend of the 25th is that this is it's the Thanksgiving weekend. Just always, as sports fans, it is such a smorgasbord of excellence, and it's not always. It hasn't always featured Michigan. It is going to be this year. Back in the day, I remember Lloyd Carr saying, "I want our kids to, go to finals, final exams, and be home for Thanksgiving." He'd say things like that. Nobody cares. No, but I don't know if they don't care about that. Nobody says anything like that anymore. It's just like, hey, it's Thanksgiving. It's going to be a great run of 4 days of sports. Most everybody's off and having a great time. It's going to be really excited about it. Michigan's going to be undefeated. It's going to be pretty awesome. So Malachi, while I get it, I'm just going to enjoy the days leading up to Nebraska coming up on Saturday. Jason says Ohio is a fair weather team. They're fast. They can spread the field with a passing game only. Yet that type of team built in the Big Ten does not work in quote-unquote weather games. Well, Jason, I don't know if you've been dialed in looking at what's coming up next, but remember your feedback there. Todd is saying the same thing. Wind, rain. Matt is saying, Dennis, hard to imagine Michigan State's attorneys, and they're now saying a Michigan player started the fight. Yeah, Matt, I read, it was third-minded yesterday. It said, forget all this. He's over it. The tunnel stuff, let's jump the shark. Let the authorities take care of it. Stop talking about it is what he was saying. Get over it. You're soft. I think he was saying that to me. And I was like, no, I'm going to deal with it. Tom Izzo was crying, so, I didn't like him crying, so. And Tom Izzo was giving it the so I figured out he'll start talking about it a little bit. But then yesterday, you're right, like this. So this Michigan State grad puts out this letter, and you're right. He said that Michigan started everything. That letter was one of the most embarrassing pieces of. One of the most embarrassing productions that I've ever seen. I think that, I don't know this, but I think that to be a lawyer, you have to go to school for a long time and you have to, you pass the bar but Saul Goodman thought that was a joke in terms of a presentation letter, that whatever they call that lawyer, Diamond Dust, the Michigan State lawyer, put out there, this Michigan State grad. Oh, look, Michigan State's a great institution, everything else, but like when the letter came out, people were mocking it. I was like, I'm not mocking I'm not getting into, dissecting a letter from a Michigan State lawyer who's obviously, trying to get something out there in the media. And, the Mars, I'm going to call him a character because he was doing some of the Saul Goodman stuff too. He was getting on Twitter and putting like Michigan State's a university. He was mudslinging as well. And I thought he was a little bit, let's be honest, he was being a little bit of an embarrassment as well. But as embarrassments go, this Dustin Diamond character, or whatever his name is, it was the most ridiculous, thing I've ever read. I mean, it was a laugh a minute. It was so bad that most people that read it thought it was a parody. It was coming from The Onion. I think that it had to be constructed as, let's put the biggest piece of clown material out. I know people say it's kind of like this, but this is the truth. Let's put the biggest kind of jokish, clownish, ridiculous kind of ideas on here. Let's throw it out there. The Michigan State media will retweet it, and it'll just create, a bunch of hysteria of people laughing, but they'll read it because it's got a big clown nose on it. If it was a bunch of if it was actually, like a real letter, from a lawyer, people would be like, I don't want to read about a real letter, from a lawyer. But let's dress it up like a clown. And let's put a bunch of ridiculous things on there. Let's misspell. It had to. They misspelled, Devin Bush's name on, but the punctuation was non-existent. The grammar, I'm no, the great wordsmith or anything else, but this was written by a sixth grader. It was done on purpose. And it worked. Look at me. I'm over here mocking it, laughing at it. And some people will be like, wow, was it really that bad? I have to go read it. And so I think strategically they dumbed it up. It's a hell of a strategy. Let's dumb something up and look like a clown because it'll make people really not believe it. And it'll get more people reading it and paying attention to it. Wow. Like the dude that tried out for SportsCenter a long time, I don't know, 20 years ago. He put on his tape and he was doing something and he was, he wasn't really good at it. And he's like, and boom goes the dynamite. He wasn't thinking that he was going to say boom goes the dynamite and it was going to be really that bad. So it was going to take off and he was going to be, have this 15 minutes and now 20 years of fame by being the worst ever highlight tape. And he's become famous. 1 million people have put in tapes, and boom goes the dynamite is the one that's known the most. It was a boom goes the dynamite type letter from Michigan State. A very interesting approach, to sit around and say, let's put a boom goes the dynamite letter out there and see how that goes. So I don't know. Maybe Michigan State a lawyer is, some kind of genius for coming up with the boom goes the dynamite. But, interesting if true. Todd thinks TCU should be number 2 in front of both Michigan and Ohio State. Yeah, I'm not going to argue too much. You got 4 teams there. I definitely think Georgia. I watched Georgia play Tennessee. Georgia looked impressive. Georgia's defense was getting all over Tennessee, and Georgia had big Stetson Bennett, the 5th or whatever his name is, 4th. He was awesome. He looked great. The passing game, the tight ends. I mean, they were deserving. Now, I put Michigan number 2. I thought they were more impressive, certainly more impressive than Ohio State was last week. It's pretty close there, and I know it really doesn't matter. There's a way that I kind of like Ohio State being number 2 with Michigan going in there because they can have a little chip on their shoulder saying, we're better. And, so that there's I wouldn't purposely vote it like that because I would put Michigan number 2 because, that's how I would do it. But I have no problem with that. TCU, just like Michigan's getting dinged for their strength of schedule, TCU's strength of schedule isn't all that. TCU is also, their defense is a swinging gate. TCU has, hung on in a few games here, but they're undefeated. I'd put them at 4. So, we can argue a little bit with that. Account 22 thinks the only team that can match Michigan in the trenches is Georgia. Jason says, what you're getting from Michigan every week, rain or shine. Can't say that about OSU. OSU will be focused on the Weather Channel rather than the game. Weather is the chance they have to win. TCU is in a dogfight every week. No truer words have ever been spoken that have been spoken by Richard, who says, we hold our destiny in our hands. I love it, Richard. You're exactly right. Trepa says Ohio State has dominated the Big Ten for 10 years, and now all of a sudden they can't win in bad weather. He's got the question mark. So it was close, Trepa, you have to admit, last week against Northwestern. And then you go back to last year, the Michigan game. I'm going to have to look for all the quotes and exactly how it went down. I mean, I was in Ann Arbor. It started to snow. And, Michigan loved it. And, Michigan, you just go like Michigan definitely is their identity was smash mouth, ground and pound. We're going to run the ball. And then they ran it all over Ohio State. And, their defensive line with Hutchinson. Hutchinson had one of the great games ever in the long series of Michigan and Ohio State. He dominated the offensive line or the tackles from Ohio State. Michigan dominated up front. And then Stroud, was it after the game or later that week? And he was talking about some of his guys weren't feeling well, like, they're a little bit under the weather. And then I don't know if he said like it was cold and, the snow. I don't know exactly how he talked about the snow. And Stroud's a California kid. And, you meet, people from California and Florida, and they love their weather. They love talking about how the sun's always shining and everything. They don't have to deal with inclement weather. It's a part of that I'm jealous, honestly, about it. I've got a friend who lives down in Melbourne, Florida. I've got an uncle that lives down in Florida. I got cousins, and they're always talking about it. It's beautiful down here. You should come on down. It's great. But it's great. But when you're playing football and a little bit of wind, it's a little bit cold, and then all of a sudden, you're looked at as soft. And that's what I'm going to get to on Ohio State coming up right here. When I ask you the question, how much better do you feel about U of M beating Ohio State than you did the season before? And Ohio State, this was something all off season that people were hammering them with, certainly Michigan fans. And whether it was true or not, Michigan fans believe that Ohio State is soft, that Ohio State is a finesse team that just wants to throw the ball. And they're not built for the cold. And then you had last weekend in Evanston, and they were terrible. And I'm going to tell you why I feel I believe there's some truth to the finesse part. I mean, they're a throw first. Let's put the ball up in the air. They're a pass happy team. Jackson Smith, the Jigba, got hurt against Notre Dame in the first game of the year. Smith the Jigba is one of the greatest wide receivers that I've ever seen play in college. He's certainly a difference maker, playmaker for Ohio State. And he got hurt against a hammy against Notre Dame. And I don't know if then they ruled him out for Penn State. I guess the talk was, or I think there was actually a report that he re-aggravated his hamstring. So why I feel much better about Michigan, I knew, and I said it a bunch of times this summer, that, I'm going to feel a lot better about Michigan if they're 11-0 going to that Ohio State game. They don't have one of the greatest players in college football, Jackson Smith the Jigba. Now, it's a wild card. It's not 100% sure that he is out for the year, that he's not going to be ready for that game, but he hasn't played since game one. And we know that we've seen Ohio State players before. We've seen it. Rashawn Gary did it. We've seen the Bosa brother, Nick Bosa got hurt against, I think, TCU and then didn't play for the rest of the year. Like, Smith-Njigba is going to be a first-round pick. He didn't have to do anything. That's a wild card. I feel better because if I feel like he's not going to play against Michigan, and that's a big advantage. Now, they've got a bunch of wide receivers already. They're great there, but you come over the top, and the game before, I think Ohio State plays Maryland. They might not, but they usually do. But they play Maryland, and let's say Smith-Njigba comes back, and, he's out there, catches 4 balls, for 60 yards, but he gets himself worked out, and he's going to be ready for Michigan. That's possible. Hell, if I'm Smith-Njigba and it's a hammy and I'm getting back and I feel like I can play against Michigan, I feel like I can play in the Big Ten Championship, that's the kind of time you want to play. The playoffs. So maybe he'll be available, but maybe he won't. And I feel better. I don't want to see – I'm not rooting for anybody to be injured or not. I mean, Michigan's had their share of injuries, but it's kind of like a fact. Like, he has not played. And there is a chance that he won't be available. I feel better about Michigan's chances if that guy's not out there. And the other thing is, I was looking today why I feel a little bit better about Michigan. And it does get back to the quarterback and the whole soft finesse, not built for cold kind of thing. I saw some metrics that were put out there. And there's a guy that works for The Athletic named Jason Starrett. And according to Starrett and True Media Data, C.J. Stroud, currently the quarterback of Ohio State, ranks 118th out of 136 quarterbacks in all of college football in the percentage of off-target throws when pressured. Now, that's a mouthful of a metric. And, when I read this, I'm like, all quarterbacks struggle to throw the ball when they're pressured. Most quarterbacks, I don't know about all, but most do. But that's not what this is saying. This is saying that Stroud is like the worst out of all of them when he's pressured. For those listening on the podcast, I'm going to read it again really slow. C.J. Stroud ranks 118th out of 136 quarterbacks in college football in percentage of off-target throws when pressured. It's 26.2%. Stroud stinks when pressured. If Michigan can run the ball and pressure C.J. Stroud, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State in 17 days. It's going to happen. That just makes me feel better about it. That's been the question. How you feel about it. Sitting out here and getting ready for 2 games before that. Some feedback, and then we'll look at the college football menu. Matt says, let's win out. Get Corum the Heisman. I have money on both. Sounds good to me, Matt. Big Ten has to win out. That is bias. 1 or 2 loss SEC teams can get in. Sure. The bias is real. ESPN is in bed with the SEC. It makes them more money. And it's real easy because they can say, strength of schedule. We want LSU. We want Alabama. We want Georgia. Anything they can do to get more teams in there, the SEC, believe it. They want to do that. And they can point to the fans, television ratings, and rankings, and ratings, and money. So, yeah, you can get left out if you're the Big Ten. That is true. Let's get some more feedback up here. U of M barrier is OSU and top 4 teams. Not a lot, but very difficult to hurdle. Sure. Hey, look, I mean, you get down to the 4 teams here. Like, I think actually, and I don't know this, maybe they'll end up not being easy games. It feels like this game coming up Saturday for Michigan is going to be an easy game for Michigan. They're damn near a 30-point favorite. I think they're going to run all over them. Illinois hasn't impressed me. People are all like, thinking Brett Bielema, he's Big Ten. I think Illinois has been a fraud. They did a nice job, but they were exposed last week. I wouldn't be surprised if they get beat this week. I don't think Michigan is going to lose to Illinois. But so when you get to Ohio State, now it's time. Like, there's no cakewalk to the national championship. And certainly it feels a little bit better than Bama. Having Bama there, Bama's a little bit scary because they're Bama. And old St. Nick there. And, you feel that can scare you a little bit. Even Dabo can scare you a little bit. But Georgia, like, what if Michigan beats Ohio State? Let's say they beat Illinois again for the Big Ten championship. They wipe them out by 30 in a week from Saturday, and then they wipe them out by 40 in the Big Ten championship, and then they get to the college football playoff. Wouldn't it be nice to see TCU at 3? Michigan, TCU in the semifinal, and then Michigan. That's about as easy. Let's just be honest. This is about as easy. If it is easy, and I just was making a case that it's not, everything's hard once you get here. But just like Michigan last year, if they would have been able to play Cincinnati, which they should have, I think they would have beat Cincinnati, and they would have been able to then play, Georgia in the championship game. They would have lost to Georgia. But if Michigan beats Ohio State, beats whoever in the Big Ten championship game, beats and gets TCU in the semifinal, bring on Georgia in the national championship game. That's what I'm predicting. That's what I'm hoping. I see the path that's there, and it's not that crazy path. It's like right there. That's all right there. Nebraska, win. Illinois, win. Down to Columbus. Win. Indianapolis, win. TCU, win. Georgia, national championship, win. It's not all that far-fetched. It's there. It's there, Captain. It's there. Account 22. Malachi. Todd's talking about it being a good game. Maybe. Treppa doesn't want to underestimate Jim Knowles, but he's using a winking emoji. Yeah, Georgia's not going to be a cakewalk. I don't think Ohio State, as much as, fair weather, they're soft, get Stroud, put some pressure on them. There's the game plan. I still don't think that's going to be easy. And yeah, Georgia, they're not just going to walk out there and win the national championship. Most of your fan base, this is from account 22, doesn't think JJ can throw like Michigan's chances. The captain says Ohio passed for 400 yards last year. It wasn't the weather. Let's look at the menu for this weekend. Oh, yeah. Not only, I got one other point on Stroud. I had the off-target throws when pressured, how he ranks in the very bottom, almost in the basement when he's pressured. I also threw this little number up there for Stroud against Northwestern. He had a career worst day in terms of completion percentage, 38.5%. Stroud had just 76 passing yards and a QB rating of 63.01, and he didn't throw a touchdown for the first time in his career. He stunk up the joint in Evanston. And somehow, I don't know somehow, I know the how. Hendon Hooker lost. Stroud moved up as the favorite. He had the worst game of his college career, and he moved up to be the favorite. and Ohio State moved up in the college football ranking. This is the Buckeyes. That's why they feel good. They went out there and laid an egg and were rewarded for it. Rewarded for laying an egg. And look, if I was an Ohio State fan, I'd feel the same way. Like if Michigan, I don't expect them to, but if they laid an egg against Nebraska or Illinois, but found a way to win, maybe they would move up. No, it's going to be hard to move up now. You need Georgia or Ohio State to lose to move up. I'm excited about Saturday. The noon games, I'll watch Rutgers at Michigan State as long as the Scarlet Knights are able to stay with that game. So hopefully that's a fourth quarter game. I don't mind seeing Michigan State or rooting against Michigan State for everything that's transpired there, their fan base and their media. Let's go Rutgers. Let's just outright. Come on. Let's go Scarlet Knights. Let's see a victory up at East Lansing after one of the greatest victories, of in Spartan history. Between Mel Tucker and Tom Izzo acting like in some of those guys up in the media up there. What's old Jack Ebling making it sound like, hey, there was Super Bowl III, Willie Joe Namath, his upset, the Jets winning it, or 1980, the Herb Brooks in the United States, they beat the Russians. And Michigan State went on the road and beat Illinois one of some of the greatest upsets of all time. Might be a little bit of letdown after like the miracle in Champaign by Michigan State last week. I'm rooting for Rutgers. Also in the 12 o'clock window, you always, we all do this. If your team is playing, you'll watch the team that your team's playing next week. And this is the case here, Purdue at Illinois. We'll see if the Fighting Illini are able to bounce back and get ready for Michigan, or if the slide continues. Will Purdue act like that's like the greatest win in program history if they're able to beat Illinois? And then you also have number 7 LSU, fresh off their overtime victory, going for 2 against Alabama. They're playing at noon against Arkansas. And if you're old enough and you're a college football fan, LSU and Arkansas is it. I am old enough. I am old enough to remember when it would be the Thanksgiving weekend. And you get Thanksgiving. You get the Lions losing. You get the Cowboys after that. There used to not be a night game, but you'd have 2 football games and all the food all day long. Awesome. I don't have to sell you on Thanksgiving. But then you'd get to Black Friday. And if you're a college football fan, it went a little bit like this. Texas would always play Texas A&M. And then you would have LSU and Arkansas would always play. I think Nebraska used to play Colorado always on that Black Friday. I'd watch them all. Then after that, it seemed like Iowa and Nebraska were playing a little bit. But way back in the day, it was Colorado and Nebraska, probably when they were still in the, did they call it the Big 12 back then, or Big 8 maybe? I don't know. Big 8, I think. But that would be the lineup on Friday. And so, yeah, it's nostalgic watching LSU and Arkansas. And I was surprised that it's just a little small number there. LSU's only favored by 3 points at Arkansas. So out of these 3 games, you ought to be able to get something good. Michigan's the red letter game. I don't always say that with Nebraska, but that's the one everybody's anticipating at 3:30. And then, the night cap here is a trio of games. Georgia at Mississippi State. You got Washington going to Oregon. Heather Dinich will be up tweeting about that, talking about how great the Ducks are with 1 loss, how they should be maybe move up to number 1. She loves herself the Ducks, some Ducks. And then TCU, fresh off being in the top 4, will they be able to handle the pressure? This is a pretty good game on paper. Texas and TCU, little showdown in Texas, the state of Texas. Let's go. It's a very nice Saturday. the way that it looks here and the way that it's setting up. Okay, let's get some feedback. What's up, G Money? Captain saying, call him crazy, but team looks like Urban's OSU teams. You're crazy. You are crazy, Captain. I've never heard anybody compare any Michigan teams to Urban Meyer's team. D Original says this is a Jim Harbaugh Stanford offense and a Raven defense. You know that D Original? That is a very original type take. And as we like to say, I'm here for it. I think that's pretty good. A little more creative with the concepts. The original adding on that you have the threat of JJ is the X factor. Hey, the original, I've never seen you on here before, but 2 straight fire feedbacks from you. Let's go. Count 22 says Michigan was starting to add wrinkles last week. Some other people talking about that tunnel stuff. Yeah. Somebody asking, are we sure it's real? Like I said, I went through all that. And I don't know. And maybe I'm a little bit behind on the feedback. I made my point that sometimes you do something so bad that it draws attention. Like I said, it's an interesting strategy. It's kind of like going in let's go in, instead of wearing the old suit and tie, let's wear some ripped up tank tops, and let's just go in with flip-flops and tank tops on, and the judge will be like, are you guys kidding? Draw some attention. Let's go in with a hat, backwards, chewing tobacco. I don't know what the Spartans. It works on Twitter sometimes. People just say completely false things like they know it. And then a bunch of people are like, you're an idiot, but they get a bunch of feedback. My mom, who just turned 80 years old, she was telling me on Facebook, she's like, I don't like when they'll have these things on Facebook, but because they'll put 3 people, she was telling me, she said they had Julia Roberts, George Clooney, and Jerry Lee Lewis. She was saying it a month or 2 ago. And she's saying, did you realize that all 3 of these people had passed away? And none of them, Jerry Lee Lewis actually did last week. And she was like, yeah, I clicked on because I didn't know. She's like, I didn't know all those people had died. And it's like, well, that's how it works. Make a claim, say something really, and it gets people. Clicks and likes are nuts. How it works. You put your algorithm, I could buy myself a bot that made this show, people can view, you can see how many views, this particular show gets, but you can buy a bot and it just keeps clicking out, and it gives you an extra 1,000 or something. I don't know how many views. I'm guessing at that, but I didn't look into it. I was reading about it. These people are taking off, and they're going to, get advertising. They're like, yeah, look, we got 10,000 people watching the show. There's probably 10 people watching the show. They're like, no, we got 10,000 people watching it because they got a bot. But hey, if it works, it's working for him. D Original, let's see. He would rather play Notre Dame as a rival instead of MSU. What are up by 40? The thing is, you can want that, but Michigan and Michigan State are never not going to play. It's kind of like Michigan and Ohio State. They're never not going to play. There's too much interest. There's way too high of ratings. You don't need to put some fake bot for Ohio State and Michigan State. People are going to watch it in record numbers all the time. Now, they would with Notre Dame. That's why they're going to come back on the schedule, because it's just too lucrative of a game for the networks. They just can't get over themselves. Oh my God, it doesn't even matter the teams stink or not. You put those two teams out there and you just get record numbers when it's Michigan, Notre Dame. Todd never wants to see him again, but hey, it's going to happen. Here's the coach. Did you see CJ crying for Day in the rain? I didn't see him crying. I purposely last week, I put the menu up where I'm like, okay, this is where I'm watching at 12. This is the 3:30 window, and here's the late window. I can watch 12 hours of college football. And yeah, my she's used to it. She sometimes looks over and she's thinking, wow, you really can watch 12 hours. And not only that, I am going to brag a little bit here. Not only can I watch the 12 o'clock, the 3:30 game, and then the 7:30 game, not only can I watch 12 hours of football on Saturday, but then I could turn around on a Sunday and watch 6 straight hours of commercial-free football on the Red Zone with another TV over here on the Lions game, watching them, and then I can wait about 45 minutes and come over the top and watch the Sunday night game. I think that adds up to more than 12 hours. It takes discipline. Like, you have to go into the weekend. Sometimes on a Sunday I'll have a beer or two, but I can't have too many. That'll stop it. That'll have me get into the second half of the night game. It can be difficult. So if there's no beer, it's a lot easier. So there's a little tip for you. Stay sober, watch all the games on Sunday. It works. But you have to go in with a plan. You can't just say, I'm just going to sit down here and I'm going to watch 24 hours of football over the next 48 hours. Let's go. You got your kids, you get your animal, you get your wife. You're like, what are you doing? You got to. But so I get all that. I am way off of it. The topic, because what I was going to say was last Saturday, I looked at the 12 o'clock menu and I'm like, I don't like any of these games. So I'm going to wait and I'm going to really gear up and I'm going to parachute in, and it's going to be Tennessee, Georgia. And of course, Michigan was playing, at 7:30 against Rutgers. I wasn't going to watch 12 hours of football. So I'm out doing some things, but I did it. I looked on my phone. And what did I see? Everybody like, oh my God, Ohio State's, they could lose. So I was back in there and I was watching the game thinking that, the possibility that could happen. But I did not see all of that. There were people asking me about the announcers and, what I thought about this. I watched a little bit of it. The coach is not worried about Ohio State. Let me read this again. Coach Antoine is not worried about Ohio State too much. The only person that can do damage is Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll need Will Johnson ready to cover him. If JSN plays, I would try my best to put some hits on him. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm going to go to the end here. A lot of feedback coming through. It gets to be where I'm having a difficult time putting it all up and talking about everything. Is Casey Thompson, the quarterback from Nebraska, playing the captain, asking, well, captain, he did not practice yesterday. So I am guessing that we are not going to see Casey Thompson. I don't think it's going to matter, but he is their starting quarterback. It does not look like he's going to be available. Practice, if he gets back to practice today, that would be something. Like, if he doesn't practice today, he's not playing. But if he can get back on a limited basis today, but he didn't practice yesterday, so the trend is it looks like he is not playing. Casey Thompson against Michigan on Saturday. Todd is scared about Georgia. They do everything bigger, better, and faster. Yeah, the thing about Georgia, they got their great tight end. He should be the guy that scored the touchdown first against Michigan in the Orange Bowl last year. But they brought out. Sometimes you see something and you just like, wow. So they had the tight end that I was talking about, Bowers, right? That's his name, Brock Bowers. And the kid's 6'6", tight end. And he's lined up on the line of scrimmage. And then they say, take a load of this other tight end that they have. He makes Bowers looks like a little kid, so look like a little kid. And so I zeroed in a little bit more. I'm like, who are they talking about? And sure enough, Georgia's got a tight end that makes everybody look like they're in kindergarten. Brock Bowers is 6'6". I mean, I don't know. I guess I'd have to look it up. Do they have is he really 7 feet tall and, 300 pounds of like pure muscle? He looked like a taller version of DK Metcalf when he was at Ole Miss. This dude lines up next to Brock Bowers. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy's a tight end? I've never seen anything like this. It's like when they show Tennessee games, King Henry, and you're watching King Henry, and they show Derrick Henry when he was in high school. Derrick Henry when he was in high school was like 6'2", 250. And the guys that he was playing against were like 5'8", he's just like Derrick Henry does that now. I remember when he went up against Michigan State in the defensive end, I think it was Calhoun. He pretty good defensive end. He went up right to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry shoved him to the ground. The guy just fell like a dirty dish rag to the ground. Whoa. Derrick Henry does that in the pros now. He was doing that against the Chiefs, throwing guys over the sideline, smashing. This tremendous football player. Why am I talking about him? Because this Georgia tight end is the most remarkable football specimen that I've ever seen. You saw it. Everybody was watching that game. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. The coach knows what I'm talking about. He says he's about 6'8", built like a tackle. Yeah, that's the one. He looked like he was bigger than 6'8", though, Antoine. Like, he looked like it would be like Shaq back when he was at LSU, if Shaq, suited up. Amazing. It's the most amazing thing, that I've seen. It really was like that. Agent Zero matches up with Jackson Smith-Njigba. Well, hey, look, I am a fan of Mike Sainristil still. Agent Zero, and we're talking about one of the great players in college football. We don't know if he's going to be available for that game or not. What we do know is that we've got both football and basketball rolling right now. Michigan back in action on the hardwood coming up on Saturday. I'm sorry, on Friday night. And then the football team on Saturday. And I just want to tell you again, if you weren't listening earlier, join up, michigan.rivals.com. Great chance right now, 50% off your first year. Full access right now. Promo code MBR1year. That's MBR1year. Maize and Blue review. It's everything you need if you're a Michigan fan. Like recruiting, it's there. Constant talk about the Wolverines on the Den. And what I've seen from Josh Henschke, I'm impressed with the publisher of the Maize and Blue review. Like, you've got posting boards and you got clowns. I'm not talking about the guys that are running some of those guys are all right. They're doing the jobs. They've been at it for a long time. They're kind of clowns too, but the guys that are with their, the posters, too many clowns. I haven't noticed as many clowns. I haven't noticed as many guys like that lawyer for Michigan State on the posting board, like just complete like lunatic clown acts It's good discussions. Just for that, I would say join. So we'll see you there. If not, we will see you here tomorrow at 1 o'clock on Good Afternoon Michigan Football. Till then,